Hello, my name is Joshua Maza, and I'm going to be telling you about the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. I wanted to read this book because I have a strong interest in science, and also because it tells about the development of HeLa cells, which created methods of cell observation which are still widely used today. The story is a biography of an African American woman named Henrietta Lacks, who learns after she visits Johns Hopkins that she has a terrible disease. Since the time period is in the 1950s, African Americans were not as welcome as whites were in particular hospitals. However, Johns Hopkins was created to serve equal hospital standards to all races. Henrietta is diagnosed in 1951 with a type of cervical cancer classified as invasive, which means it has already penetrated the surface of the cervix. However, it is later learned that the original doctor misdiagnosed the origin, and instead the cancer came from the epithelial tissue and not the cervix tissue. The treatment is still the same, but it shows the underdeveloped techniques for observing cancer left a large margin for errors. It was without a doubt that Henrietta's case was malignant, which means it was infectious and active. They used a method called pap smear, which can prevent cancer if checked in the early stages. However, not many women, especially African Americans at the time, checked at all, let alone even went to hospitals on a regular basis. Another problem was that the pap smear results were not easily interpreted, causing patients to die because a malignant form of cervical cancer would easily be confused with just cervical infections which were not cancerous. Oftentimes, antibiotics would be given to patients with malignant forms of cancer while the entire cervical tract would be removed just because of a small cervical infection. A man by the name of George Guy, the lead tissue expert at Johns Hopkins, is brought in because the realization of underdeveloped methods for checking for cancer is well known during the time. George Guy was known as a vulture because whenever there was a malignant form of cancer diagnosed, he would try to come in and take a tissue sample. Henrietta's husband, Day Lacks, has already signed waivers for that to happen, so the vulture came in and took. George Guy later realized that Henrietta's cells reproduce at a very fast rate, allowing the world to have tissue cells to experiment on however they wanted. It led to new developments in cell cultures, disease prevention, and most importantly cancer itself. Henrietta died less than a year later in 1951, but her cells lived on. Henrietta, when she was alive for the first third of the book, was a very interesting character, but many times I did not agree with her. She never told her family she had cancer until it was too late, and more importantly, her family was never told that someone had come to take her cells. She was a very important and independent woman who married a man named Day Lacks. They later had 5 kids, although one would later end up in jail and finding Islam, while another would die in an insane asylum. The rest grew up to lead normal lives, trying to achieve proper recognition for their mother's contribution to science. One woman, Rebecca Skloot, gained much information for writing the book, came from a woman named Deborah Lacks, who was by far the most influential force in achieving recognition for the Lacks family. I really enjoyed how informative and thorough Rebecca Skloot, the author, was in writing this book. It seemingly credits everyone involved, even the smallest of characters that had just a little bit of influence. In a way, Rebecca Skloot helped immortalize Henrietta as well, although not by creating cells, but by writing such a thorough biography. Despite the book being a little bit confusing from all the characters involved, such as Henrietta's entire family and the various scientists in the field of cancer research, it was enjoyable because of how informative it was. It had great historical value and accurately displays how science was conducted from the 1950s till today. It mentions examples such as night doctors, Tuskegee experiments, and Nuremberg trials that displayed the moral ethics of that time, and how it affected Henrietta because she was an African American, which at the time was a great disadvantage for those seeking medical care. The lesson that can be taught from the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks is knowledge is everything. It can be seen countless times in the story from the Lacks family. If they had only known who George Guy was and that he was taking Henrietta's cells, if only the Lacks family had known about the mass production of HeLa cells, and if only they had known what cancer truly was, then maybe the Lacks family could have been better off with the money and proper recognition they deserved. I know knowledge is everything is a pretty broad and straightforward lesson to be received, but I believe that despite its simplicity, it is very overlooked by many, because one thinks they understand when in reality it is the exact opposite.